ZDBs proudly presents the Faith, Fashion, and the Hustle podcast, hosted by the founder of ZDBs, Sonia Bryant.
Right at the very end, you were at the point of having been at the mall now 14 years, had a strong relationship with them, but that store, that particular location, a major corporation came into the mall, looked through your location, said, that's the one we want out of the
entire mall.
40, 50, 60, whatever 80 spaces there are. They said, we want that particular space. Yeah. So the mall said, well, because we have this contract and we're signing with them, we're going to have to shift you over to somewhere else.
To something smaller. And they wanted to. The deal was, aside from the anchor stores in that mall, we were in the largest space available at that time. Now, H&M next door to us had 2 levels, but other than that, we were the largest space. If I recall correctly, we were the largest space in the mall at that time. We were in over 7,000 square feet, and we were there for more than 5 years. So we had accumulated a lot of stuff. So there again, I had kind of an inroad with some of the employees there, and they kind of gave me a heads up. Actually, the manager came to my store one day and took me aside. He said, I just want to give you a heads up. You've been a great tenant here. I want to tell you that there is a big, huge corporate store looking at your space because it is one of the bigger spaces. And he said, so it could be a year out before that would happen. But, I mean, the Lord had given me favor with these people. So that was huge. And so I got in my mind, I started looking at that time. I didn't really go heavy into looking for a new place to go, but I had told them, I said, look, this is not anything to do against you guys, but I'm going to have to probably find another place outside of the mall just because I needed that space, you know.
Some certainty.
Oh, yeah. And so I started there again, started praying, Lord, open doors. And we were getting to crunch time. It was getting just a few months out, and I needed to find a place to go. And I really didn't want to move to a smaller space here in the mall, even though the mall had been fantastic to me. I thought, Lord, I've got to do something. So we started looking at commercial property, started checking retail spaces in that area in Ridgeland, and there were some options, but the prices were outrageous, you know. But that's retail for you. So I went to look at a commercial property that was about 1.5 miles from the mall. And I drove up, and it was a nice building, but it just wasn't what we needed. It was just the way it was built. It wasn't the right structure. So when I realized that space really wasn't right, I said, well, let me drive around a little bit. So, I mean, less than a block down the road, there was this building. It was a really nice brick building, and there was a sign in the yard. And I was like, that might be something we could do. And it was had a listing in it. So I wrote down the phone number, called the phone number, and it was a bank. And come to find out, as I talked to the banker, he explained to me there was 2 buildings on that property, and they had been foreclosed on. So I was like, yes. This is so cool. And so I said to him, I said, well, can I meet with you to look at the property? He said, yeah. When do you want to meet? So we set up a time. In fact, Dallas, you went with me. We went and looked at that property. There was 2 buildings on the property. And the Lord just, I mean, we negotiated a price, and it was phenomenal. I mean, the Lord just opened the door, and I find my niece who works for me, she's our HR person. She told me not too long ago, she said, Auntie, I just am amazed at how God opens doors for ZDBs. And that's not about me. That's about honoring Him. And it just gives me much pleasure to say God is with us. He really is. He's walked through so many situations.
Yeah, and so when there's times when I know people have probably, and this goes for so many people out there that are listening too, but when people look at you and they want to criticize or say, well, maybe you did this wrong or you haven't done that or X, Y, Z. But God's favor many times gives us an unfair advantage. That's true. And so finding that to be the case, it's not something that going to brag about or
No, it's
or
not.
shout at other people. Well, favor ain't fair. You know, we've heard that saying many times, but that advantage comes from, again, relationship with God and
I think it is.
honoring God
Yeah.
in your business and all those things. And we'll get into that. But we have not actually looked at the other part of this, which is you started without a doubt in the Mississippi location. We've talked about that,
Yeah.
over and over, and kind of the evolution of that. But there was a moment in time where things really kind of shifted into a different phase that really created a movement in ZDBs. And those two things are other locations outside of Mississippi, and of course the online, your online presence as well. So kind of how did those things step into those things, and those things began to take on a life of their own?
Well, this happened in 2019. A good friend of mine, her name is Sarah Minton. She lives in Texas. She and I become acquainted because she'd been a longtime customer. She actually arrived in my store at North Park one day, and I was in the back, and they came and said, "Hey, there's a lady out here who wants to talk to you." And so I walked out, and there was Sister Sarah Minton, and she said, "Girl, if you know her, you know how fun and exciting she is." She said, "Girl, you need to bring a store to Texas." So I looked at her and I said, she said, "Yeah," and she started explaining to me all the reasons why. She'd already done some research. She kind of had some things in her mind, and we started talking about it, and boy, bells started going off in my head. I'm like, whoa, that's a really cool idea. So she gave me the phone numbers to the mall. She actually, I don't know if she had the phone number, but she told me the places, and she left, and within 10 minutes I was on the phone with the mall in Texas. And I mean, it was, you guys, when I tell you God is amazing, or maybe I'm crazy, maybe it's both, but I got on the phone that day. I think I called and left a voicemail. I didn't get an answer. By the next afternoon, I was on the phone with the leasing manager of that mall, and in about 3 weeks, we were set up doing business in Humble, Texas. Now, is that not crazy? That's just nuts.
Oh, yeah,
But
that's pretty lightning fast.
It was crazy.
And it was all sparked by one lady and her saying, "Hey, you should think about coming to Texas." Because that was that an idea that you had kind of had, or it just kind of came out of the blue?
Yes, it actually was. I had talked about it for many years, but had never just acted on it, and just never acted on it. And so
that little spark just set the fire.
Absolutely. And so Sarah's the little spark that fired off in Texas. And so that it began something for ZDBs. And what's really weird, we did that in 2019, and just within a year, COVID hit. So that was a really crazy, as everybody knows, it was a crazy time.
Unprecedented. Very
unprecedented. We were in the mall, had our store, that store. We were working, this is bizarre, but we would come in, the mall was completely shut down, and there was no stores open, but we had online orders coming like as fast as lightning. We couldn't keep up. But I didn't want, here all the people in the world were at home, and here I had my ZDB's employees coming to the mall. And the crazy thing is, to get into the mall, we actually had to sign in. We had to show our driver's license, and we had to come through a certain door because there was nobody working. So everything was crazy, So we would work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and we would come in and print orders and pull them and ship them. And there was a point in time which they were like, "Hey, look, you're going to have to take your clothes to your house and ship from your house." I'm like, 7,000 square feet of clothes? There's no way they'll fit in my house. I can't do that. And so finally everything worked out. The Lord kept us running. But for months, I think it was probably 2 months, we shipped clothes out of the mall office. We had to haul all the packages to the post office, but there again, perseverance. I kept working all through COVID, and you know what? The Lord blessed us and kept us afloat through the whole thing, and I'm just amazed at it. I'm just amazed at God.
Again, another crisis into a launching pad that
oh,
that
my
really
goodness.
kind of amped up the the website side of things
Oh,
and the online
yes,
e-commerce
absolutely.
type stuff. Give people a chance to.
And the wild thing is
interact with
just
these other-
months before COVID hit, we had just launched a brand new website. And that was a God thing because the website we had, it was kind of running on a little wheel, just barely going.
Wing and a prayer.
It was barely going. So I just knew that we had to amp it up, and God knew if you trust him, he directs your paths. He really does. And he goes before you. And
Wait,
I'm
you're
just
saying this Bible thing works?
Oh, absolutely. And
Even in business. Now, business is cold, hard business.
absolutely.
You're saying even that?
It does. It does. I know that many people have success stories, but I can't do it without him. I just can't. I mean, he goes before me on everything, and I've been dealing. You were asking about the other stores in 2021. We opened our second, or actually our third store in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. We went to Tanger Mall there. No, I am back up. I forgot about Branson.
Yeah. Don't forget about Branson.
Oh, yes.
Pentecostal Mecca.
That's right. In 2019, we opened Texas. 2020, we opened Branson, Missouri. 2021, we opened Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. 2022, we opened Central City, Kentucky. And that was that was 21. And then we also opened in 22, we opened in Monroe, Louisiana. So we now have 5 locations, and not including Mississippi and our corporate offices, we have a store there. So we have 6 locations, and in the process of working on our Indianapolis store, and that's coming soon.
So you were, if you were to go back 10 years, you probably would have had no idea.
Oh, absolutely not.
10 years ago,
No.
so that would be 2014.
No.
You just had the store at North Park. You were just kind of, things were kind of picking up, but it was just kind of plateaued in some
Yeah. ways,
if I
Yeah.
remember. And I was just graduating college, and then I was fixing to get married, and so I was still working there with you. And I remember there were good days and bad days.
Yeah.
There was a
Yeah.
lot of in between.
And I can tell you a turning point for ZDBs, and a lot of this goes to the glory of God, and also my husband. My husband is a huge giver to the kingdom, and in what year you and Stacy got married? 2015, 2016. I revamped the way I gave to the Lord. So at that time, I was not tithing per se on the business per se, because I didn't really take an income. That was the daddy thing that I just really didn't take a income from it. So my husband said to me, babe, I really feel like we're missing out here. I feel like you've got to figure out how to tithe on your business. And I said, you're right. You're right. So we didn't have a clue what to do or how to do it because, like I said, I didn't take an income. So we just got to talking about it. He said, listen, I tell you what, let's try something. And I said, okay. So he says, let's take your gross sales, let's split it in half, and you tithe on 50%. And I looked at him and I said, okay, let's try it. So the first month I sat down to write, and this is way before we had all the stores that we have now. And I remember my daughter-in-law, who was working for me at the time, she called me in the back room. I started doing it in just a couple of months. You guys cannot imagine the increase by doing that.
But just to ask the question, obviously, Daddy's pastor, and some would point to that and say, "Oh, he was just wanting extra income.
He just wanted to fill his pockets." But you know what? Once it leaves my hands and it goes into that plate, it's in the God zone.
And so your testimony is that when you decided, hey, I'm going to tithe based on this, do it as close to the biblical model as I can, and walk in that, because there's not really quote unquote business
There's
tithe
not a format for us.
formula there.
No, there's really not.
So you did it to the best of your ability, increase that, and as you increase that, then so you said,
Oh my goodness, I was really nervous, you guys, when I wrote that first check out. And this is when we just had one store, but I wrote that tithing check. I'm not kidding you. I choked up. I was like, oh, I mean, you're talking about gross sales. You're not taking inventory, payroll, any kind of expenses off the top. I just split it down the middle and tithed on 50%. And that just sounds crazy. And I'm doing that to this day. But I can honestly tell you that was the turning point for my company. I probably do way over tithe because that's not the money I bring home. But you know what? You can't outgive God. And my father used to say, you can't outgive him and you can't outpinch him. And so you know what? I just let go of those reins. And I tell you what, God's done the rest. And if you will learn to give, and the Bible talks about a cheerful giver, at that moment, I probably really wasn't a real cheerful giver that day. Because I was thinking, what have I done?
that's too many zeros on that check.
I was like, whoa, dude, what have I done? You know what? But I trust my husband. I know what he is and who he is and how he follows the Lord. And I just had to trust my husband. And I did it. And you know what? Yeah, I probably pay way over what I should, but I really don't. Because God has turned around and blessed my company. Oh my goodness, I can't even tell you how much. And it's not about me. It's not about my husband, but it's about the Lord. And we've also given to different missions and stuff. And I want to encourage you, if you're not a giver and haven't learned the art of giving, you are missing out big time. You need to learn that because that's really when my company began to expand. So I started saying just a minute ago, my daughter-in-law called me in the back office. This was just a few weeks after I started doing that, and maybe even 2 months. And she pulled me in the back office and she said, "Look at our sales." And I know my eyes just about bugged. There were months in the mall, in the small location we were at, we were kind of doing the Canton, Mississippi Mill thing. Things were really just kind of dropping off. Our sales had dropped off. And I think it was the location there again. Our location was not a real good spot. We were kind of off in a tucked off wing in the mall. We were there for several years. But she showed me the sales. And I was just blown away. I said, "Stacy, are you serious?" She goes, "Yeah, look at this." I said, "There's no way." She said, "Yeah, our sales had," and don't quote me, but either tripled or quadrupled in like a couple of months. And you know what? That wasn't happenstance. That was not. Had nothing to do with me, had everything to do with God.
Causation and correlation.
Yeah, so you know what, and I really feel, if you are not a giver, and I said this already, but I am just encouraging you today to fall in love with giving to the work of God. It's not all about numerals. It's not all about the greenbacks. It's also giving of yourself to the kingdom, giving of your time, giving of your energy. Giving is not just about money. It's about a lot of things. Giving to other people. And there again, it's not just about money, but looking out for others. My husband gives money to so many avenues. And
well, and your giving then prompts other giving.
Yes.
And other people that are in the church, their giving prompts other giving, and it becomes this blessed cycle and circle. And so that right now, and I'm just going to kind of shift us into this, is that there's a lot of people who are kind of embarking on this journey of business as mission. There's conferences about that and that kind of thing.
Right.
So what would you say to those people we've talked about giving, and to me, that's directly in line with the mission of that, is to say, the more that God blesses you and the more that you can bless the kingdom, the more that God puts into your hands to then again bless the kingdom.
Yeah. Yes.
So how would you encourage somebody to continue down that path? Like you signed that first check and your eyes got big and you were kind of scared of that. Mm-hmm. How can you kind of nudge somebody over the edge to say, hey, you go ahead and take that step of faith? What would you say to somebody kind of wrestling with that?
That's a loaded question, Dallas. I just challenge you to try it. I challenge you to try it. I'm going to give a little testimony. One night in church, this has been probably about 2 years ago, a young man sits a couple rows behind me, and my husband was preaching, and the Lord spoke to me and said, turn around and tell him he needs to give a sacrificial offering. Well, I'm like, really, Lord? Are you sure? You sure you want me to do that? And he was preaching, and people were on their feet, and it was live, and worship was going on. And I turned and I walked back to him, and I said to him, and I just told him what the Lord told me. And his eyes kind of got big because he's got a young family, and I know things are not real at that time. I don't know about now, but at that time we're not really, there were some struggles. And a couple weeks went by, and actually my husband and I were out of town. I came back into town, and I don't even know how I found out, but he'd given a sacrificial offering, and we had storms in Mississippi in the South. We get these storms. Well, his roof on his home had been damaged, so the adjuster came out and did the adjustment and told him, the roof is going to be this amount of money. It's going to cost about $11,000. And 2 weeks later, he received a check in the mail for $15,000. And they knew the cost of the roof was $11,000, but the insurance company sent him $15,000. That's not a mistake. That's our Lord. And when you learn to give sacrificially, I'm just encouraging you. Sometimes it's scary. It's a scary place to be, especially if you're struggling financially. Give God the test. Let him do the work. Let him do it. You can't outgive him. You can't outpinch him. Just try it.
Prove me now herewith.
That's right. That's right.
If I will not open up the windows of heaven,
oh yes,
pour you out a blessing that you cannot contain.
That's right.
But and in our personal lives, we probably think about that. But you're advocating even in business, we should try the Bible?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would
concept.
not be where I'm at without the Lord, and all the glory goes to him. Because I'm just amazed. I look back and see the things that God has done in my business, and over, and you said it earlier, crisis comes and God comes through. It's happened. I can't even count on both hands how many times the Lord has come through. And there again, my niece said, I just can't get over how God comes through. And it's not that we're doubting God. It's just, I'm amazed by the things that he does. I'm just blown away. His goodness, his mercy, his the love he shows us. It's pretty incredible.
It's a pretty cool life that we get to live to see
is.
God do that. So to finish up, we'll just kind of step into this. As we kind of wrap up everything here, we've had a deep dive on, in some ways, just scraping the surface of so much that's happened. Yeah. And so we've just talked about giving and all of the things that encompass that. But a lot of this, if I remember right, just having obviously lived in your house and heard you talk about it, there were some things that kind of happened many years ago that really kind of influenced you into this line of thinking and kind of the path that God took you on. What was that?
Well, as a young girl, the Lord gave me a deep desire to live for him. Did I always stay on the path? No, there were times that I trailed off. I'm just going to be upfront and honest. And I didn't always, do everything like I was supposed to. But at 16, Mom and I were living in Portland, Oregon, and we had been there for a couple of years, several years in the college. And the senior class, we'd been there for their whole tenure there. And they invited Mom and I to go with them on their senior trip to the coast. And in Oregon, the coast is quite chilly, even in May and June. But we went, and they had a cabin designated for the guys and the girls. And so that night, one night, we would have devotionals. We were there for a couple of nights, and there was devotionals, a guitar, and we sang. And I remember some of the really sweet choruses that we sang. And I don't remember what was going on at the moment, but people were praying and just meditating and talking to the Lord. And there was a Bible sitting there, and I reached over and I grabbed the Bible. And I opened up the Bible. Probably, I've grown up in church and handled a Bible quite a bit, but I probably didn't even know there was a book in the Bible called Habakkuk. Probably not. It's kind of tucked away there in the middle of the Bible. And I picked up that Bible, and I was praying and crying and talking to the Lord. And the scripture, I opened up my eyes amongst the tears and looked down at Habakkuk 2 and 3. And I'm going to read Habakkuk 2 and 3 for you. And I'm going to tell you how this has kind of come full circle for me, and pretty incredible.
So I've heard you tell this story. I love this story because it covers so much of your life and so many parts, so many pieces that kind of just amble their way through life, and yet God has had a touchstone to really bring you along that path. So here is Habakkuk 2 and 3.
For the vision is that yet for an appointed time, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. So at that time, I wasn't really certain of what that meant, but I felt like the Lord had spoke to me and told me He had plans for my life. I wasn't really sure what that meant. I had suspicions, but of course people, always said to me, even at that age, oh, your sisters who were 8 and 9 years older than me, they're married to preachers. You're going to marry a preacher, right? You're going to marry a preacher. I'm like, absolutely not. I am not going to be a preacher's wife. I am not marrying a preacher. That is not going to happen. Well, I was pretty adamant about that, but the Lord had another plan for my life. And as you can tell, it took a totally different turn. But I thought for years after, as time went on, I looked at that scripture and I kept thinking the Lord was talking to me about being a preacher's wife and then becoming a pastor's wife. And yes, indeed, that probably was part of the plan. But I was sitting in my room the other night and I was talking to the Lord and just meditating. And I got to thinking about the scripture, and I feel like so much of the time we kind of put everything in one basket, but I feel like this stretches a little further even into how the Lord has brought me through so many things and so many avenues. And I feel like ZDBs is also part of this plan. And in whatever favor the Lord has given to this company, I feel like this was part of it. It was going to tarry, but it wouldn't tarry forever. And I'm so thankful. My heart is so full, so grateful for all that God has done. And I'm thankful for my boys. I'm thankful for my husband. Thankful for what the Lord has given me. I'm not worthy of His mercy and His love. And I just encourage you today, follow your heart. Follow the Lord. Follow in His footsteps. He will not lead you wrong. And does it eliminate our trials and tribulations? Absolutely not. But how can we live without Him? How can we walk through life without the Almighty? And I encourage you today. I hope that I've said something, Dallas, and I have shared something that would inspire you to not only be a better Christian, but maybe someone that walks that entrepreneurial path, that it will lead you and direct you in the right direction. And I'm so thankful for what He's done for us. And thank you for joining us today.
Well, everybody, thank you for your time and sharing this journey with us. And we're going to conclude today There's so many more things that we could cover, but I feel like that kind of puts a little neat bow on it as we end here today, that really everything comes back down to primarily your relationship with God. No matter how far you go, how successful you may become, don't forget where it all started. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to this today.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing you, talking to you. Come in the store.
We love
come
y'all.
see us.
Yes.
And God bless.